Hello, folks. Welcome and thank you all for joining us today. Today's session is going to focus on best practice for interview process and delivering effective feedback. I'm going to introduce our two speakers today. We are joined by two panelists who will share valuable insights on their views on modern interview techniques and feedback. I'd like to welcome, first of all, Fredricka Shepherd, co-founder and joint managing director of Voltage Management. Voltage Management is an end-to-end HR partner for organizations. Fredricka is a chartered fellow of the CIPD and a certificate management consultant with the IMCA. She recently completed 9 years as a member of the Executive Council for the SFA and is a serving member for the board of the Institute of Management Consultants and Advisors and chair of the Workplace Mediation Committee on the IPMO Board of Directors. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Glad to be here.
We have Adam Coleman. Adam is the CEO of HR Locker, a trusted HR software solution with over 55,000 users. He assists clients in developing and implementing best class in HRIS solution. Prior to setting up HR Locker, Adam held a senior HR positions in both O2 Ireland and UK and was the head for HR and ESAT Digiphone. He places a strong emphasis on work culture and places productivity and adult development at the center of the HR Locker strategy. So welcome both. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
Good to be here.
So I'll just crack on with a couple of things. So today what we're going to do is start off with best interview techniques for HR teams. The traditional interview process is candidate one-on-one or against talking to an interview panel, and they will go through their education and their CV questions, and that would really see if they're a good fit for the role. But research shows qualifications and experience offer low value when evaluating candidate success, with behavioral insights and offering a far higher value in predicting success. So Adam, my first question here, I think, would be suited for you. Can you share your insights on the primary limitations of the traditional interview structure in today's workplace?
Yeah, I think what happens in the workplace today is that people become managers, and then they end up having to recruit for their teams, and then and I think we all have seen this in the past, and they use their prior experience of being interviewed themselves as the bona fide of how to do it. But that's not the way it should be done, because it needs to be grounded more so in the prep work that's required. So what I'm talking about there is that really good job analysis is really important. And when I talk about job analysis, is if you want to break that down into simplistics, it's about finding out what are the components of the job. That is a good thing in terms of matching with CVs and all that sort of stuff. But once you actually have that in situ, once you have the core job analysis done, and then you have to understand, so that's what the person will do in the job. Then it's how they're going to do the job. That's where the cultural element comes in. And a lot of people who will be on this podcast or webinar will understand this because they'll have been trained in this. And from my experience, behavioral interviewing is by far the best way to find out whether there is a right fit of that individual within the culture of the business. And then the final element of it that needs to be assessed really is the motivational fit of the candidate. Is the location right? With the advent of remote working or hybrid working, what's their preferences? Also looking back in the past of what problems they've come up in the past in these type of scenarios and how they've dealt with them, and how that basically pans against the selected behaviors that should be aligned with the business in order to figure out, will they work well within the business in how it works today? And then from a future perspective, if you look at it from a motivational fit perspective, why do they want to join you? Why do they want to do the job that they want to do? Why do they want to do it in a location that you want them to do it in? Are they capable of working remotely or in a hybrid scenario? And it's when you get all that data, and one of the biggest mistakes that interviewers do is during the interview, they're making their decision. And that is the worst thing that you could possibly do, because then at that stage, you start hiring people who are like you, or that they like the same rugby team as you, or they come from the same background as you. But what you need to do is you need to gather up all that data, the background review data, in other words, what they've done in college, why they've done it, all that sort of stuff. what they've done in their jobs, and how they've done it, which is against the actual principles or the behaviors that you selected within the business. And then are they motivated to do the job going forward? Once you get all of that data together, put it aside, because you're going to be more than likely meeting more than one candidate, right? Unless you're obviously looking for a very, very solid person and you have a really good relationship with the headhunter or recruiter that you're dealing with, that you're happy just to meet that one candidate because Jamie, who is that amazing recruiter, has basically got such a good relationship and understands your business so well that you know that he's going to give you the best candidate, not waste your time that you're interviewing 3 of them, right? This concept that in-house recruiters and in-house hiring managers have is that I have to meet 3 to hire 1. That doesn't work either. But once all that data is gathered, put it aside, right? Go away from it and then come back to it later and look at it independently. So you get all of the biases out of the way. So the fact that he's wearing a pink tie and you don't like people who wear pink ties or whatever the case may be is all divorced from the actual decision.
Yeah.
Now I could go on about this forever, so I'm going to stop now just to allow other people to have some feed in.
I think one of the points you said there was interesting, that people make their decision quite quickly. Like there's the old saying, which I'm sure you all know, you can make your decision. You can make a decision and whether you're hiring someone within the first 10 seconds, which I always thought was rubbish. Do you know what I mean? Because the amount of times people have walked into an interview and look, I didn't mean to, but you do. You're just going, oh, I don't think so. And then you get talking to them and then they open up and then you're going, oh my God, brilliant candidate, absolutely amazing. So yeah, what you're saying, write down all the notes, get all your do's and don'ts and come back and look at them later. Like I'm sure, Fredricka, you've gone through similar situations yourself over your career span.
Oh yeah. Look, I think, we often hear that, I go with my gut feeling, and your gut feeling tells you very quickly whether this person is right. But the piece that you're missing when you go with your gut feeling as quickly as that is that, as Adam is saying, if you step back from it a little bit and you get to actually have a conversation with this person. So of course you want to gather all of the kind of core information about the candidate, but that's where I think AI can really help. And we know that recruitment, like I think HR professionals generally, we think we're most comfortable with the use of AI around the recruitment process, because there's a lot of initial information, obviously, that we can actually use AI to help us with. But where AI can't kind of be as effective is in that relationship bit. Who's this person in front of me, whether it's on the screen or in person? And if you can step back and actually allow the conversation to develop for you to get to understand who this person is, what are their motivators, what are their ambitions, then you get an insight into really rich information about the potential of this person. Because while we're hiring for an opening that we have right now, potentially, we need to see that, is there a journey ahead with this particular candidate? Could we see a future in our organization for this person? And I think, for obviously the HR audience today, very often the HR role in an interview process is to cover off key specific areas, and the hiring manager will probably cover off, more technical specific areas, whatever that role is, whether it's medical or technical or services or whatever. But I think it is getting to know the person.
Yeah.
And the other side of that, I think, as well, is you're looking for somebody who's curious. A candidate who comes to a job interview, again, whether it's on the screen or in person, and has done a bit of research. So I think the thing we're finding now about online screening and online interviews is it's very easy for you to hop on an interview. You don't even have to take a half day anymore. You don't have to come into the office in a suit, all those
You're on
things.
your mobile.
Yeah. So in fact, people even sit in their car and put on a background and you don't even know where they are. So interviewing for the candidate has become much easier to do. And as a result, I think there's lots of candidates potentially applying for jobs that they're not necessarily committed to or really passionate about. Yeah. And so for the interviewer, that's a real challenge. We see it a lot, candidates coming through a process, and when you're getting down to that final selection, that's not the time that you want to discover that the person is really not committed to the process, or really not committed to moving or to the career. So I think screening for some of those things early on are important.
I would agree.
Because you're investing a lot of time in this whole, process of interviewing. And of course, interviewing is one-dimensional anyway, but you are investing in the process.
Yeah.
We recruited quite a few people recently, and exactly as Fredricka said, the application process itself, they had to spend time on it. And what we did was we basically, everyone who applied for the job, we got them to answer 3 or 4 questions. If they didn't answer 3 or 4 questions, they were excluded.
Not interested. Yeah.
The next step that we did with them was we asked them, once they did that, we then sent them out a requirement that they needed to video themselves, and they need to video themselves answering these 5 questions. Okay. Again, and I'll give you an example. We hired, I think it was about 6 graduates. We initially got, I think it was 300 applications. Of that 300 applications, I think it was about 200 of them actually answered the questions and actually had an option of putting up a cover letter. So if they didn't put up a cover letter, we felt that they weren't interested enough, because there's loads of people out there looking for jobs and blah blah blah, and there's loads of people out there with jobs, etc. But when it got down to the actual video, of the 150, we'll say, I think it was about that, who replied initially, and we requested them to do a video, only 34 of them actually bothered recording the video. So there's an element of, if you want to call it AI, that's one thing. I'd like to call it natural selection, is another way of putting it, where they're naturally selecting themselves into the company. And when you get to that situation, they feel they know enough about the company. And when they actually come to a face-to-face interview, then they're prepared, or they're better prepared than they would be than just sending in a CV and then just calling them for interview. If you understand me. So I think, again, the job analysis preparation, the candidate's preparation for the actual selection process are 2 ways of ruling people in and out. And then you get down to, okay, well, they should know now because they've been through this process. So they should know the behaviors or the principles that we operate to. They should know what the role is about. They should know exactly how much we're paying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you get a lot of that stuff out of the way. And the richness of the interview then that you have in the final selection of, maybe, like we as I said, we got down to about 30 people. We actually hired 5 out of the 30.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good ratio.
Out of the 300, really, to be honest.
Yeah, when you think about it,
Yeah.
But I think, Adam, I think you're absolutely right. Going back to the beginning of the whole process, and where does the selection piece start? It is actually that, really, really a deep understanding of the role.
Yeah, I think that was nearly my next question, because I think we've given so many options there to people, and there's a lot to take in. But I think for people to walk away from this, what are the 1 or 2 changes that you could make straight away that would get you just to dive into your candidates just that little bit better? What are the 2 or 3 different questions or changes you could make now today for companies that would start making that journey and start making a difference?
I'm happy to answer first there. I think the first thing is stop looking for the purple squirrel. They don't exist. So be realistic about what you're going out to the market to look for, and have an understanding about where this role could potentially lead to, because we know that jobs are changing so much. The world of work is evolving. So, the role that we hired for last year is not the same role that we might go back to look for this year. So have some sort of a concept and a vision of where this might go, because you want to find somebody who's going to be able to go on that journey with you. Okay, so that's the first thing I would say. The second thing is get as much information up front about the role, the terms that you're offering, and the recruitment process. So picking up again what Adam said about the process he took for his company recently, I think I would absolutely agree with that. If you can actually set the expectation of the candidates early on, what you'll find is the ones that connect with it are the ones you want to talk to.
Yeah.
There's going to be lots of people who say, oh my God, this screening process is too difficult. I'm not going to waste my time. Well, they're probably not the ones that you want on your team anyway. You want candidates to invest in this process so that it's not a transaction. You know, this is like a relationship that you want to invest in a relationship with somebody. So you want them to come to the table with some sort of indication that they want to invest in it as well.
I always called the situation, Fredricka, when you know, if you look at LinkedIn and you look at how people work and the way they work and all that sort of stuff, right? It's a situation of where if a person is spending 2 years in a company, I see that as a divorce. You understand? So if you can limit the divorce on the basis of how, when they join the company, what are their expectations of how they're going to be? On the other hand, there may be jobs that you want to hire for that you don't want people there for any less than a year, you know? Yeah. So you have to, do you want a marriage? Do you want to go out with the person? Do you want to explore it? Or is it a situation that you're happy enough for that person to be with you for a couple of years and then leave? That's part of the way that you have. And again, it's down to the job analysis element. It's down to, is this a job for life? Or is this a career? Like we always say, we want people to work in HR Locker. We want them to have a career, not just a job. But there are roles that you just want people to do a job too. So that comes down to the analysis at the beginning. And it comes down to that frames the whole thing all the way right through the selection process and the questions that you ask at interview.
Yeah. And I would say then when you get to that stage, you know, and you're meeting the candidate, are you, again, having an understanding, are you looking for a problem solver? Are you looking for an innovator? Are you looking for a team player? Are you looking for somebody who can eat up data? You know,
and that would all come back, sorry for interrupting, that would all come back to you prepping your job spec right, understanding what the role needs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think too, it's whoever's participating in the interview process, tuning into all of that, because I think sometimes we can be so busy that we show up for, you know, you have a handful of interviews you need to get through, you look at the CV and you go through the motions. You know, you are busy. Make the best use of your time. And that may not be the best use of your time to just show up like that. So actually putting in more time into the prep, into the planning, and being really clear about how you're going to approach it and the rationale why you're approaching it that way, I think it's going to bear more fruit for you. And also, it's going to lead to a better candidate experience. It's going to lead to better decision-making on your behalf. And it's going to lead to, I guess, that feedback piece. You know, if you want to give a candidate feedback, or if you want to give feedback even to the person you choose, the quality of the feedback is going to be just so much better.
Yeah, that's another thing as well, is lack of feedback. That I'm getting to these questions now, so we'll move on. Is the next one would be, thanks a million for that, guys. Would be predicting candidate successes. So I have a couple of questions here, but based on your experience, which non-traditional predictors of success do you believe are most overlooked in the traditional interview process?
Adam, you take that one first.
Repeat the question again there, Jamie.
Okay, I'll actually read it out from my notes.
Yeah, please.
Based on your experience, which non-traditional predictors of success do you believe are most overlooked in the traditional interview process? So look, to understand the candidate, best, what questions are HR or line managers missing out? Like I know there's only a couple of really good ones we can throw in there. Like what are yours?
I would think the predictors of success for me is that you look at all questions in interviews should be grounded in behavior-based questions. So they should be basically start off with, tell me about a time when you did X. Now, the prep is really, really important, okay? You don't ask just generic questions. You can ask a generic question and make it very focused on the candidate. And let me give you an example. Let's say, for instance, you're hiring for a HR manager, okay? And let's say as an organization, the most important part of that HR manager's role is going to be systems, right? And you see on their CV that they've implemented 3 systems in the past, okay? A classic question to figure out exactly if that person has that ability and how good they are at that scenario is, it'd be like, tell me about a time when you implemented a HR system. What did you do? What was your role in the situation? How did it work? And more importantly, what was the result of it? And I want you to answer that question from the time that you spent in HR Locker. So you're bringing them right back to the actual experience that you're looking for them to exemplify in the future within your organization. Then they'll give you a situation. And the ideal thing from that, to make it predictable, is that the best answers you can get from them, and you can explain this to them, the best answers I can get from you are the ones that are most recent, that are most like the type of job that we're actually recruiting in here, and also the ones obviously that you were most successful at. And when you ask them that question, they go, okay, so now you zero them into that area of experience that you want to really find out about. Okay. So now you've got it. This was the situation. This is what I did. And this was the result. And you can question around that scenario as much as you want. And it'll be very, very hard for them to, and I'm going to go lie or make it up, because you ask them specific things that have happened to them.
Yeah.
So when you bring it back to very, very specific situations, you get really royal data to be able to make decisions on. And it is also okay to turn around. They say, okay, that was a great success. Now, very, very easy add-on question. Tell me about a time when you implemented a system that didn't work. All of a sudden they're going like, oh my God, right?
Yeah.
Take your time. And it's a conversational scenario, and they will tell you. And if they don't tell you, if they start ifs and buts and we's, bring them back to, well, did that happen in this situation? So you're looking at really core data, not about future orientated, oh, what I would do if blah, 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 blah. No, I want to know what you've done in the past.
Yeah.
To see, can you do this in the future? And whether we can actually then, during the selection process, we can say, okay, Fredricka doesn't have this experience, but she's had this experience, which is quite similar. And are we willing to take that risk and develop that person up? And this is why we put adult development at the center of what we do. And exactly what Fredricka said earlier on, then you're not chasing the purple squirrel that doesn't exist, right? You're being realistic with the candidates that are out there to do the job that you want to do, because you're never going to get a candidate. And if you do, it's happy days. Yay, that's 150% fit. And if they're 150% fit for your job, then you have to say, well, why do they want to come and work here?
Or how are you going to retain them?
Yeah, and they're not going to learn anything.
Yeah.
So are they just jumping job to job to job for money to money to money? And getting back to the marriage thing, like I look at candidates, and if they've spent less than 2 years in every particular company, there's something wrong. There is something wrong, either within themselves or within their career or within the marketplace, because it may not necessarily be them. Because the marketplace, the amount of times I hear people saying, oh, you shouldn't spend any more than 2 years in any one company. What's all that about?
Yeah. And then you have other people saying the complete opposite. You have to spend a minimum of 2 years in every company. So it's difficult because, I've spoken to so many candidates, and you're there a lot of job hopping. We all know that word. And they just haven't settled. They haven't been happy. And then you do look at it. Was that candidate interviewed properly? Were they the right fit, or were they just taken on because someone didn't understand who or what they were interviewing for?
And at a time when there's a shortage of talent, and And I'm not so sure if there's a shortage of talent anymore. I think it's a situation that's where companies aren't advertising appropriately. They're not resourcing appropriately. And there's so many jobs out there, right? And people aren't deciding what they want to do either, or the type of companies they want to work with. And I think if you read the research that, you know, the younger candidates, if you want to call it that, the ones who are coming out who are going to develop the future on, you know, you hear people saying, oh, they want to work with companies who are into sustainability and want to have a purpose and all that. I hope that's the case. I really
They don't know yet. They're just out of university. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still not sure if I want to do recruitment. I've been in it 20 years. Like, I studied architecture. I think what you said earlier on, Fredricka, is the purple squirrel. That is amazing, because I know from my side, dealing with clients, they're there going, I need a candidate who needs this. And you're there going, that's 3 candidates. That's not one person. And you try to understand and explain to them, like, you've got to be flexible. And they're no, this is what I want. And I was there, well, how many of these people do you have working in your company? Oh, none, I've never come across. And you're just there, well, this is your industry. You've never come across them, but you're not going to be flexible. It's very, very difficult, the purple squirrel thing. And it's hard to get across to some clients that if people don't exist, they don't exist. Do you know what I mean? If someone is 80% of what you need to do the job, that's good. Do you know what I mean? If you're happy and they're a cultural fit, that's what you'd be looking for. So I just quickly,
that's why we go to cultural. The culture stuff is my hobby horse, because like in HR Locker and what I would, even as a consultant, HR consultant for several years before we just went straight product, it would have been decide how you want people to work in your business. Develop a competency-based, principle-based framework. It doesn't have to be massive. It's normally the same for most organizations. It's normally teamwork. It's normally customer focus. It's normally, you know, flexibility. Like, let's be honest, they're the 3. And if you choose those 3 and you define them out and you develop what good looks like under each one, and get the people involved in your business to do this, right? And then hire against the criteria of how you work. You know, like, not everybody is going to be able to, you know, everybody is chasing the C# developer who's amazing, right? But let's be honest with you, how many C# developers are there out there that are amazing, that are going to want to work in a company that's, you know, 30 people? You know, the amazing ones who want to work in a company of 30 people want to work in a small organization. So isn't it better to find out if that C# developer wants to work in a small organization and doesn't want to work in Google? I remember years ago, and there's another program out there, and it's a little bit rude. It's called FUCKUP Nights, right? And it's where founders come and they talk to the audience about things that they messed up with. And I remember I was in Manchester at the time, and this guy came up, and it was a tech startup, and he said, we got our money, you know, our investors said we should be looking for this type of person. We went out, we hired this guy, and he came from Google, right? Now, the guy was an amazing, and as it worked out, I actually met this guy later, about 6 months later, which is really bizarre, right? He was an amazing guy, blah, 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 but couldn't work within our culture. So he cost us a lot of money. It wasn't his fault. We selected the wrong candidate because we didn't tell him that we were all going to be, you know, working in a hub, and that you don't get your free lunches, and you don't have your this, and you don't have your that, and if you have to set up your own laptop and all this sort of stuff, right? And he says, that was my biggest mess up, okay? And that brings it back to the whole interview process and the expectations of the hiring manager and their inability to realize, my God, culturally, if I take a guy from a really large organization, I really need to figure out whether he can motivationally fit within this small organization in the situation that we are in this moment in time. So that's a massive part of this recruitment and interviewing process, I think.
Okay, and just a quick one, I'll just get off the candidate success now. Aiming to you, Fredricka. How do you assess a candidate's skills without relying solely on their past job titles or educational background? So what would you do to get ready before the candidate walks in for an interview?
Yeah, so again, I'd look at, so how would this skill be demonstrated on the job? So how do we see people already using this skill and showing up with this skill? What is it we want from somebody who has this skill. Because I think, again, we put a lot in the job description that we want, which are aspirational, and the person may never get to use it. So in what way do we want them to use it? And again, coming back to that, are they a problem solver? Are they an innovator? Are they a team player? In what way do we want them to show up with that skill set to contribute? And are we bringing them into an environment where they can contribute? That's the other piece. So that I think is really important. And even just, what is their driver? Somebody could have really good skills, but they're like, I've spent the last 2 years doing that. I actually want something else, So understand what their drivers are. What are they passionate about? I think we all have some passion somewhere. It gets maybe, beaten up sometimes, depending on that. If we're not in a culture fit, if we haven't got an environment where we're flourishing, that's where some of those sort of core aspects of each of us can get really disruptive, get disrupted and misaligned. So I think, sometimes you can try and actually understand why somebody might be moving from their current job, why they think this is the role for them. And, to pick up on what you were asking earlier about, what were those sort of maybe traditional type questions that maybe are overlooked, that we're not using anymore. I still think it's worth asking a conversation about, what's your ambition? Where would you like to, we don't say maybe where you'd like to be in 5 years, because goodness me, 5 years is just far too far out there. But, where would you like this job to take you? If I was sitting down with you in 12 months' time, chatting about your review and some goal setting or some of your career development, what's the kind of conversation you'd like us to have? Like some really probing questions like that, because now what you're trying to do is actually get into the mindset and the thought process of this individual. And the thing is, if they haven't thought about that, if they're not particularly curious, maybe that's okay. If we've already said, I don't want a disruptor in this area. Actually, I want somebody who's in high compliance. Then how they answer that is going to be an indication as well.
Yeah.
You don't need a rock star in every. You don't need a rock star in every job.
No.
Another really good one, you go back to traditional questions, and I think it's building on exactly what you were saying, Fredricka, is I always get great understanding of why people left companies, reason for leaving. And and I will, if I'm interviewing somebody, and here's a heads up if you've been interviewing me, I will ask you why you left every single job that you've been in, right? And it's not good enough to say, oh, I've done as much as I could in it. No. I normally say, why did you leave it? And let's be honest, the reason that most people leave companies is because of people. And I said, so I'm giving them the platform to be honest about it, right? So why did you leave that company? Because there is reasons for leaving, and there's acceptable answers for reasonable leaving. Oh, I did as much as I could, which is rubbish, to be honest with you, right? It's normally down to, I didn't like the person, I didn't like the location, I've fallen in love with somebody and they're living in another part of the world. It's real world stuff, right? Yeah. And you can smell the predictable answers. Oh, I've done as much as I could, blah, 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 which is normally rubbish, And I think the interviewers, if they get in behind it and they say, look, why did you leave there? And by the way, majority of people leave companies because they don't like their manager, and that's proven, right?
Yeah. And actually, Adam, I was just going to pick up on that point. Actually, I think another aspect of that as well is, and you touched a little bit on it earlier about, the things that maybe failed that you were part of. I think it is really important to inquire about the learnings somebody brought with them from an experience. What were your takeaways from that? What were your personal takeaways? How did you feel as a team you gelled? Why do you think that the team didn't gel? You know, what when you step back from it now and you had the chance to do that again, what might you do differently?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
know? Like it's
Yeah.
again what you're trying to really do in the interview process, because the CV tells you a certain amount,
Yeah.
but behind the CV, what you're trying to really get to know is, who is this person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. I was
And
just about
so,
to bring that up.
yeah, yeah, who is this individual? And I think what you're doing there, when you bring somebody into that kind of a conversation, it becomes a really interesting experience for them as well. All
Yeah.
right.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the other part to add to that as well is that it's okay to ask negative questions. Tell me about a time when you failed. You know,
Yeah.
it
And do
really
you
is
think,
important.
do you
And
think,
again, as you said, Fredricka, and the add-on to that is, what did you learn from it? You're
Mm.
absolutely spot on. I agree.
yeah, I find, and we need to move on. We've only 10 minutes left, but I do find in interviews, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm doing this completely wrong now. I find you get through the first half the interview process, which is the questions, the structure, and stuff like that. And then after that, I kind of like to slip down in my chair a little bit and get a little bit more comfortable in the interview with the candidate. I find if a candidate's nervous, you're going to get those structured answers that they've thought about before they come in. But I think if you've gotten through the bulk of the interview, and then near the end, the last 20% or something, just relax, make them feel more relaxed. And then you start going into those questions that are going to tell you, is this the person the right fit? Yes, they can do this. Yes, they have that qualification. Yes, they've done that. But then then you want to find out who the person is and what they're like.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to go about it? I think it's a good way, but what do you guys think about that? Fredricka, I'll let you start off with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, understanding what your role in the selection process is, so you're going to have somebody who's going to be selecting them based on their technical capability, whether they're an accountant or whatever. And then you're going to have the person selecting them about, will they be that cultural fit? And we know it's been said time and time again, hire for attitude, train for skills. And that is so true, because the jobs are evolving so quickly now. So if we're only hiring for the skill that we need at this time, then we're not future proofing the whole process.
100%. Yeah.
So, the chances are in all of our businesses, we're going to need people who can do new things that we haven't even imagined yet. And so if you don't get to know the person and you don't get to understand how they think or how comfortable they will be with change, or how at ease they are around the development or the uncertainty that might be ahead in certain things, you'll never get to know their true potential in a particular area.
It's an unsuccessful interview, I think, personally. Yeah.
So when you're sitting down, to consider the different candidates you've interviewed with your, interview colleagues, whether it's been a panel interview or whether it's been, just different stages, I think that's the type of conversation you want to have about, but can you see this person still with us? Can you see this person contributing in such a way? Yes, maybe they can do the job right now, but so can 4 of the other candidates do the job right now. Do we want more than that?
Yeah, you want someone who's going to come in and understand what you want and get on board with helping you achieve that.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, but I do need to move on here, guys. I have one more question, and then we have a couple of questions from the audience here. Just legal and ethical considerations. We'll start off with you, Fredricka, in this one, but I'd like Adam's opinion as well. Are there any legal and ethical considerations that HR professionals should consider for interview best practice?
Oh my goodness, yes.
We only have 5 minutes now.
Yeah, so they're all the things that you would imagine. Remember the importance of equality and dignity throughout the process. Make sure you're making the interview process accessible for everybody. And remember, diversity is richly enabling for all of our organizations. So, you know, our unconscious bias about the different types of individuals out there and how different people engage with an interview process. You know, it really is important for us to understand again that people will contribute in different ways. So the interview process isn't ideal for everybody. So the setting of the interview, you know, the whole format of the interview, that's where I think if you can give people as much notice up front about the journey of the interview and the selection process, the more prepared they can be. And remember, we're not trying to trick somebody here.
Yeah.
You know, we're actually trying to find out who this person is. So definitely all around, obviously, equality and diversity and things like that. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, you still have some individuals who might ask about childcare. And guess what? It's not the dad that is asked about childcare. It tends to be still, or, you know, what are you, you know, do you drop your kids to school? You know, it's amazing. Now, I think COVID has been a leveler on an awful lot of fronts, for maybe better equality on that front. But there's still quite a bit of unconscious bias there that you see coming in. So definitely lots of legal and compliance matters. The importance of keeping good notes so that you can actually stand over your selection process. Because remember, candidates have the right to inquire as to why they were unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And so that's where your selection process, so HR tend to be good at this, where we map out the process. We try and get the interviewers to give us their scoring cards, and I would say for an interview process, if you have 2 or 3 people interviewing, 1 scoring at the end of it is sufficient.
Yeah.
Just to help inform the decision, but also make sure that you can actually go back to the candidate with that feedback if it's needed.
Or even go back with the team of people that are hiring to go through everything like you guys brought up earlier. Yeah. And then I'll have to stop you there.
Okay.
We've literally added a quick answer off you on that one if there's anything. Apologies.
No worries. The importance from my perspective is that, again, we'll go back to it. It's having the same process, okay? Putting people through the same process. It's also basically telling them what's coming up next. So everybody operates off the one interview guide. Everybody is asked the same questions, okay? And that gets rid of a lot of the unbiasedness. Yeah. And the final thing is, and I'm glad Fredricka brought it up, is in regards to the scoring, right? Do not score a candidate until you get all the data. You sit down with the people who are involved in the interview process, and then you score them, in our situation, against the content of the job, against the behaviors I want in the company, and then the motivational fit element, right? And have one scorecard. And then at the end of every interview, at the end of every analysis, what you do is you say, is this person hireable? Yes. Is this person hireable? Not for now, but for the future. Is this person hireable? Never. And here's the reason why, if you understand me. And keep it really, and I think it's gone back to it, keep it simple. Because with GDPR and data requests and all that sort of stuff, it's really, really simple. If you can say, here's my scorecard, this is what happened, this is why you're not being hired, or, you know what, we've just found a better candidate and we will consider you for roles going forward. So put them into those 3 criteria, and I think you should be fine.
Perfect. Well, look, thanks a million, guys, for today. It was absolutely amazing. I didn't get through half my questions, but I think everything was answered without the questions, so it was just as good. We will be sending out a recording of this. We do have a couple of questions off people here. I won't be able to get through them all, but we will answer most of those questions when we're getting back to everyone. Just a quick one, really. A question from John here. How can we improve giving constructive feedback when interviewing for a large volume of roles?
I would say just really quickly, Jamie, again, you know, if you're keeping that master score on each candidate, it doesn't have to be, you know, a volume, but it has to be clear that there was a criteria that you were using that was consistent across all of the candidates you were seeing. And if you say that we only considered people who scored, you know, 80 above for the final process or something like that, you know, it doesn't have to be a volume. I think what people want to know is, that they had a fair shot, and
Yeah.
that actually they were treated fairly. So that's what you want to try and actually demonstrate. And that helps you make a better decision. If you have that structure, you know, you're going to make a more credible decision.
Perfect, thanks. And then the last question I'll give to you, Adam. A question from Sandra. What recommendations do you have for AI tools to screen candidates?
I don't think I think you don't have to go to AI to screen candidates. You need to put a proper process in situ. I haven't seen look, it depends on what type of company you're talking about. If you look at the GlaxoSmithKline Beechams that have thousands and thousands and thousands of millions of applicants every year, it's not possible for them to interview all of them. So yeah, ideally they have a situation that there's a waterfall scenario down through it. Like I wouldn't pin myself against one product. Get the waterfall scenario going down through it. And then you shouldn't be interviewing thousands and thousands of people. As Fredricka said, if you've got your criteria that rule people out, okay, you're then, and then if you get a good person to do background review interviews, which is be it a recruiter, external recruiter, or an internal recruiter, the feedback that's required is only ever in the last piece, if you know what I mean. So I think AI has an awful long way to get the use cases right. The use case for recruitment is definitely there. I haven't seen, I couldn't recommend one in particular. I'd obviously go and I'd say, oh yeah, use hire, absolutely wonderful. But it's about the process. It's about the process you put within the scenario. You don't have to go out and spend loads of money on AI currently in the recruitment process. You have to understand the process and then choose a tool where they've actually taken your process and they've embedded it. And therefore, if you're getting thousands and thousands and thousands of applications, yeah, sure, AI will rule everybody out. But when it gets down to the interview, I don't think
We're not there yet.
No, nowhere near. It's exclusion is AI tools. Inclusion is the interview process. And I don't think AI is on the inclusion piece yet. But and if it is, by the way,
I'll be out of a job.
If it is, my email address is adam@hrlocker.com, and can you send it to me, please?
Look, we'll have to wrap it up there, guys. Look, again, thanks a million for your time today. And lovely having a chat with both of you. Very, very there's a lot to take away from this. I think there's a lot of education there that I hope some of the audience there will be able to take down some notes. As I said, we'll send on this recording and we'll try and answer the rest of your questions. Apologies I didn't get to them all. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.